It's a people, it's a community, it's a life, it's a heart, it's a spirit.
The heck would you want a picture of a tattoo of $1,000 on your penis for?
The medications that have now come out really make HIV a manageable disease.
Like I said, in today's market, real estate alone has gone up 15%.
Right, so sometimes there is no battle. Lately, if I don't get my musket dirty, that's great with me.
The cops were pushing her and egging her on to get her nuts. They were calling her names.
And then I find that the actors and actresses, for the most part, are like sponges. They soak up whatever you give back to them.
And he kept explaining to me that I wasn't gay, that you cannot be gay.
Religion and spirituality are big topics these days. I mean, the bookshelves, the bookstores are full of
incest, not funny. Midgets, not funny. Incestuous midgets.
Getting funnier.
Hello, welcome to Talking About. I'm Christine Callinger. With me today, live in the studios from QPTV, are my guests from the AIDS Center of Queens County, or ACQC. And I'd like to welcome Judy Pedraza, Site Coordinator at Rego Park, and Luis Ortega, the Director of Education. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Okay, we will be talking today about HIV, AIDS, and the services ACQC provides. And we will be taking your telephone calls. So please call us with your questions at 718-460-9802. All right, now, ACQC is the AIDS Center of Queens County. Could you please give us an overview of the services you provide, and also the locations and how interested people can reach you?
Okay. ACQC provides comprehensive social services for people who are HIV infected and affected, and we also do have prevention programs. We provide case management, primary medical care, legal services, education and outreach. We have a licensed mental health clinic. We have a scattered site housing program. We also have an independent living skills program and a HOPWA program, which is another housing program. We also have harm reduction programs where we work with people who are in different stages of recovery or who are still actively using. Did I leave anything out?
So you have a whole range of services you provide, and you also said those infected with HIV and those affected by HIV. So we've got a very large population that can come to you, almost everyone.
Right.
Great. Where are you located?
Well, we service anyone who lives in Queens. Our main site is in Rego Park. We have another site in Jamaica and Far Rockaway.
Okay.
Our harm reduction programs are in Jamaica and Far Rockaway. The housing programs are in Jamaica.
We have 7 sites total. 3 of them are main sites where you can access most of the services, and the other ones are smaller offices that are program specific, like our housing programs.
Okay. All right. Why don't we, is there any program you'd like to showcase or give us particular information about, or something that has been used quite a lot most recently? Is there any one particular area that is perhaps accessed by more people than others?
I think that's our case management department. I think most people who either find out they're positive or have questions about caring for someone who's positive in the household, normally their first entrance into our agency is through the case management department, and Judy happens to be the coordinator for that program, so I guess she can talk a little bit more about that.
I think what happens when people are newly diagnosed, they don't know which way to turn, and the case manager it's kind of like helping people take little baby steps to accomplish whatever they need to do. We help people get benefits. We help people find housing. We assist families in working with their children. We work very closely with our legal department. We kind of help people get everything that they need to get, including medical care, which we now have at all of our sites. And As Louis said, I think most people's introduction to the agency is through our case management department. Maybe their doctor sends them to visit us, or they go see a lawyer, and the lawyer realizes that they need more than legal services, and that's how they come into ACQC. We also have a lot of clients who have been positive for a very long time and continued working, and they never really needed any assistance until they might have gotten ill for the first time, and then they need some more help.
Right. Let's talk about testing for a few minutes, and who should be tested? Do you provide now the medical services? Do people come to get tested?
We have testing in 3 main sites, Regal Park, Jamaica, and Far Rockaway. And the testing program is actually pretty busy. I think a lot of people are coming to get tested. The question you ask, who should get tested, is kind of like a loaded one. You know, we like to say everyone should get tested. Unfortunately, I don't think, you know, AIDS and, you know, having HIV and AIDS is still one of the diseases that have a lot of stigma attached to it. Finding out you're positive for a lot of folks still carries a negative connotation to it. So I think people should be tested, obviously if they're engaged in risk behaviors. So maybe they're sharing needles, they're actively using drugs, they're having unsafe sex, they've put themselves at risk, they have multiple partners, variety of reasons. But I feel that they also need to be in a supportive environment to be able to handle the results, you know. So although people might be engaged in risk behaviors, we want people who have support, that they, if they get a positive result, get support from home or a partner or some kind of, you know, friend, guidance counselor at school, just to make sure that they themselves are going to be safe afterwards. So, yeah.
Now, do people come also to learn about safer sex practices? Is there part, I believe you're the director of education.
Yeah.
Do you have programs where you go out into the community to instruct the various different segments of the community on safer sex practices?
Yeah.
And could you elaborate a little bit for us?
Yeah, we actually have a really large education department. We have 10 staff and about 100 and some odd volunteer peer educators. So that's over 100 people that are going out into the community doing, you know, education around just some of the prevention and transmission issues around HIV/AIDS, about testing, about treatment. They're doing outreach, talking about safer sex, talking about risk reduction. Our programs are all tailored for the most part on a peer model. We have 8 programs. And each program works with a specific population, or they target a specific population. So, for example, we have a program that works with people who have an incarceration history. We have a program for Latinos that's held in Spanish. We have a program for adolescents. We have a program for men who have sex with men. You know, so it's like on that model. We have a lot of people that come in. They want to volunteer. They want to give back to the community. They want information for themselves. We provide a free training. Our training is 6 weeks long, twice a week for 6 weeks. So a total of 36 hours. And at the end of the training, people who successfully complete are certified to do peer education work. And then we work with them and scheduling them to go back into the community. They do that in the form of outreach. Sometimes it's tabling at the mall. Just standing on a street corner by a train station and, you know, letting people know about ACQC, where we are, what our programs are. If people have questions about HIV, they're there to answer those questions. And we also do a lot of presentations in the community. We do a lot of things in the schools, community centers, senior centers, a lot of in-service training in some of the hospitals. So there's a lot of education happening all across the board, from Far Rockaway, you know, to Long Island City.
So people can come in also if they can't find sort of an outreach program in a church, or I don't know, churches, but schools, senior citizens
they can
programs,
walk into our agency and they could speak to one of the staff one-on-one. And we actually have that going on a lot. Some people, you know, issues around drug use or safer sex are private. So they prefer to just talk one-on-one with someone. And so the staff is definitely available to do that as well, and spend as much time as they need answering their questions. Absolutely.
As part of the safer sex education, do you provide any materials? What do you have, some sort of kits for
Yeah, we prepare safer sex kits, which include condoms, sometimes a female condom, lubricant, water-based lubricant, dental dams, things that people will use, depending on who their partner is, to keep them safe so that there's no exchange of body fluids. So we make up those kits at the agency, and then we use those kits when we're doing outreach. And they're also available to hand out for anyone who just wants to walk up to the agency and ask for a couple of condoms.
We have many people that stop in just to pick up some condoms because they can't afford to buy them, and we're happy to give them out.
Okay. Let's talk about a little bit. We've touched about the 8 communities. I believe we do have a caller on the line. Hello, Anne? No caller. Okay. Well, you touched about the 8. We have 8 communities. You specifically have the peer outreach. And let's get back to testing a little bit. Do we have any connection, any community that is not getting tested that should be, or is there any community area in Queens that there has been a rise in AIDS, HIV, where we might need to bring it to the attention?
Queens is an extremely diverse community.
Right.
As most people know, it's, I think, the most diverse county in the United States. So there's obviously many communities that are harder to reach. We concentrate on efforts, obviously, on communities that, through statistics and through our experience, we see have high rates of HIV infection or have been diagnosed with AIDS. And so those communities, such as Far Rockaway, Jamaica, Western Queens, that Jackson Heights area, we have a lot of clients. A lot of our client base come from those communities, which is why our offices are located there.
Right.
And so I think that we see them coming in quite often. I think that there's still, unfortunately, 21 years later, after 21 years of talking about HIV/AIDS, there are still some people that feel, oh, this isn't an issue for me.
And it's not going to affect me.
It's still somebody else's issue.
Right.
I'm not involved in that. I don't use drugs. I'm not gay. I'm not whatever. And so they feel, they're not vulnerable or they're not at risk. And so we don't see a lot of older people. Like 50 and over coming in to get tested. And I think it's connected with that whole idea of, older people having sex. We don't think about it. But they're having sex and they're having unsafe sex. And they're becoming infected. And there's not a lot of resources out there, I think, to reach that community. Although we're obviously out there. But
just to add to that, one of our peer educators recently came back after giving a presentation at a senior center, and she commented on everyone was very quiet and didn't ask too many questions, but when they put out the condoms at the end of the presentation, they were gone in a minute.
Okay. I believe we have a caller. Is Anne there?
Yes. How are you?
How are you, Anne? Thank you for calling.
I think Judy Pedraza would recognize my name. My name is Ann Vasquez. I used to work at an agency, Long Island City.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
It's so good to see a program like this on prime time.
Thank you.
It's about time. I've seen programs like this, of this nature, after 11 o'clock at night. But I just wanted to really backtrack a little bit on the part where Luis, we've met many times before. You probably don't remember me.
I actually do, Anna.
Okay.
I actually do. I recognize your voice.
Forget.
I'm not in the field anymore, but I'm still an AIDS activist. I've been for about 20 years. And your partner there knows my history and my advocacy for women and HIV. But I just want to backtrack a little bit on the HIV and testing. That it's everybody's issue, and it is everybody's problem. And yes, maybe there is not as much stigmatization attached to HIV testing, but I think the one thing we need to draw on is heterosexual women. Whether you're Caucasian, African American, or have Hispanic descent, women are still the highest risk factor simply because they may be a partner that have same-sex activities in the past and don't identify themselves as being gay. And so when you talk about HIV and testing, we need to emphasize that it's everybody, from a young adolescent as early as a tween at 12 years old to somebody who's a senior citizen. But I think this continues to be, in my eyes, in my personal opinion, still a lack of focus, designs around women and their issues. So I just wanted to kind of point that out a little bit for those people who are out there listening in the Queens area during prime time, you know, as opposed to listening to some of the other programs on paid TV, that they're listening to public access, because this is very an important issue. And although I'm no longer involved in the field because I've kind of removed myself a little bit from it, I'm still an activist. I still fight for women's issues and women's rights, and I'm a Latina who feel that everybody needs to speak and need to do something about this issue, whether you are positive or not.
Right.
And I just wanted to thank Louise and Judy for being on the air with this issue. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Ann.
I'm proud of
Nice to hear from you.
And give my love to people out there.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you for calling in.
Actually, Ann brought up a really important issue, and she's absolutely right. I think traditionally, women have been underserved, and unfortunately throughout the 80s when we were talking a lot about gay men, and we still were trying to figure out a lot of stuff about the disease and how people got it and what did it mean, and people were dying left and right, and there was a lot of fear that women were a group of people that were definitely not looked into. And so the 90s come and we see all of a sudden women having the highest incidence rates, new infection rates coming up. And it wasn't because they were ever immune to it. It's just we didn't see them that often. We didn't meet their needs. We didn't talk about their needs. We didn't talk about the cultural issues. You know, Ann mentioned she's Latina. You know, we see right now women of color are the highest rates of HIV infection. And so when you look at that, you have to see, well, how does culture play a role in that? You know, how does having a family, you know, women traditionally are kind of like the caretakers of the home, and usually their health is last, right? And we need to be able to look at that and really let them know, well, you are important, right? Your health is important, and you need to take care of yourself. And women are predominantly being infected by, obviously by men, some of those men who are injection drug users, and sometimes the wives don't know. So, yeah.
I believe Francis is on the line.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, this message, I just was happened to change channel, and I saw my friend Judy. And this is Francis from Queens.
Hi, Francis.
Hi, you know me, right? Francis, the Italian singer.
Oh, the opera singer. How could I forget you, Francis?
And I don't know what the topic is, but I'm sure it's all good. And I just want you to know that I'm an HIV negative, now 11 months. With that new medicine with the Kaletra, and my T cells are so sky high. And people say, Francis, what's your remedy? Well, how do you do it? I say, just love, laugh, and pray. And that's my remedy. I don't know what the topic is over there. Forgive me, but I just changed the channel. Here I see two people I know, and it was really nice to see you. And I haven't seen you in years in person. Here I am. I see you on TV. So God bless and I'll see you.
Thank you for calling, Francis.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you. Now, Francis brought up an interesting point. He mentioned some drugs, I believe. So,
I also want to clarify, because he also said
he's HIV negative.
He's negative for 11 months because of the drugs. And I think that that's a common misconception as to what the actual medications do. People who are HIV, we know there's no cure for HIV. Bottom line, when you get HIV, you have it for life right now. There is no cure. The medications, which have really been excellent in terms of keeping people healthy and keeping them healthy for a much longer amount of time, what the medications do is lower the amount of HIV in the blood.
Right, he mentioned the T cells.
Right, so the lower amount of HIV in your blood, the higher your T cells, which are immune boosting cells, go up in the body. So it's not so much that you've turned HIV negative, but that the medications have suppressed the virus enough that your immune system is functioning as good as it can.
Right.
Yeah, so, right.
I believe we have another caller, Jerry. Hello, Jerry.
Yeah, hi. This is Jerry Billy calling.
Hi, Jerry.
I was wondering where AIDS originated from.
It's a good question.
Wow. If I had the answer to that, I'd probably have a Nobel Prize. There's a lot of theories out there, Jerry, obviously, that have been speculated on for 21 years, and there's really no answer to that. There's a lot of research being done. We've read things in the papers. I know up until recently that HIV may have mutated from a similar simian virus. There really hasn't been any concrete evidence as to where it started, how it started. A lot of times I think we spend a lot of energy thinking about those things, and I'm not saying that's not important. I think it is important, and there are people definitely, working on that. What I try to do is always, it's here. people are becoming infected, and unfortunately, people are becoming very sick and dying from it. So how do we kind of contain it and handle it right now to stop it? I mean, HIV is a preventable disease. We can prevent it, we know that. So let's handle the issue at hand now. And if one day we find the answer to that, then we'll kind of handle it from there. I don't know how relevant that would be, though, to the situation at hand, though, knowing how it started or where it started.
All right, Louis, thanks a lot.
You're
doing great work.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Perhaps we can touch upon testing a little bit more. So people can come in to ACQC's offices and receive the medical department's care and get tested. What about home testing? And people may be reluctant to come in. Are home tests reliable?
So the home tests are reliable. They have been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. So they're out there. You can buy them in the pharmacy. They're usually behind. You usually have to ask for them. They're not necessarily right on the shelf. Right. But they're usually somewhere near where you pick up your prescriptions. And so you ask for it. It's called home access.
Okay.
And home access is it's a blood test, very similar to the blood test you take at the physician's office. Obviously, you don't draw the blood with a syringe. You kind of you prick your finger and there's
like
very detailed instructions, right? And then you mail that into the lab, and you're given a code number to call back. You punch in your code number on the phone, and then you get your results over the phone. So I mean, in terms of the test being reliable, it has been approved, so it's definitely an option out there for people who want to maybe do it in the privacy of their own home, or don't know where to go, or are afraid to go and wouldn't get tested otherwise.
Right.
So it's definitely an option out there for folks if you can afford the home test, which is a little pricey. I think it runs in the $40 range or so. Yeah.
But people should come into ACQC because it's not only the test itself, it's that whole...
the pre- and post-test counseling, which is an important piece to it, and you don't get that with the home test. So, I mean, one of the reasons why it is in New York State, besides home access, that pre- and post-test counseling is mandated by law that people get. And part of that is so that a counselor can sit with someone, number one, identify, has this person had risk behaviors? A lot of people want to get tested, and when you really ask them, they're like, well, why do you want to get tested? Oh, I drank out of the cup and I found out someone had HIV. Well, then obviously some education has to take place. And chances are that person won't get tested because through that pre-test counseling, they'll get the information, that so that they know they really haven't been at risk. And so it's an important part. And I think another important part is, again, kind of sorting through those issues around what if you come back positive?
Right.
Do you have support systems in place? How do you think you would handle that situation? Some people say, well, I will kill myself. And so obviously we need to rethink whether that person should be tested or not. And so that counseling piece should take place, which you don't get with home access.
Right.
On the other point, the other side is if somebody tests negative, how will they stay negative?
Right. So then harm reduction, one of your programs, harm reduction, comes in that. So then, of course, you go through the safer sex education. Let's now focus in a little bit more also on the newly positive, as what types of counseling is available? You've described the legal services. Can we go a little bit into the different areas of counseling we have?
Well, we have a licensed mental health clinic that we have therapists and psychiatrists and many support groups in all of our sites. A lot of times when somebody is newly diagnosed, they think, I'm going to be dead in a month or I'm going to die in 6 months. And the reality of the situation now is absolutely that's not true. And I think that there's nothing like a support group for somebody who's newly diagnosed so they can listen to other people who have experienced all the emotions that they're feeling at that time and hear how other people were able to cope with things. I always say for some people the HIV is just the tip of the iceberg, but that might bring people in to get some counseling and therapy that they've needed for a very long time.
That's true.
And the support is very important. And I think we provide a very nurturing, caring type of environment for people who feel they have no place to turn.
Right. So they can come into the 3 offices for the whole range of services. And then let's say someone is interested in your housing program. What does this housing program entail? I'm interested about.
Okay, well, we have a few different housing programs. Our newest program is our scattered site housing program. And all that means is that I shouldn't say all that because it's really our biggest challenge in providing services for our clients. But we find apartments scattered throughout Queens. And but that program, you must come through the city HASA program, which is HIV/AIDS Services Administration. It's public assistance enhanced benefits for people who are HIV positive and are eligible for that program. So that's our new scattered site program. We also have an independent living skills program where we help folks who have had some difficulty in living on their own and teach them independent living skills. And it's from the simplest thing to learning how to throw out your garbage to a more complex financial management type of issue.
I believe we have Sean on the line. Welcome, Sean.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Sean.
Hi. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I have a question.
Okay.
What's the most commonly spread way that AIDS is spread?
Good question.
Good question.
The most common way AIDS is spread, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's actually 2 main ways that HIV is spread, just to also clarify, because HIV is the actual virus that's spread from one person to the other, and AIDS is the disease that develops after a period of time. But the 2 main ways is unprotected sex, regardless of who the partners are, and sharing needles, usually through IV drug use. Those are the 2 most common ways that HIV is passed from one person to another.
All right, thank you very much for answering my question.
You're welcome,
You're welcome.
Sean.
Thank you for calling, Sean.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Back to the, now we have these housing services, and you have to come through the city. What about if someone needs services and doesn't know how to, that there is this available? How would they normally find out if they wouldn't be in ACQC? Are people falling through the gaps, perhaps?
Definitely. There are a lot of people falling through the cracks. And anyone who has been looking for an apartment here in Queens knows that you can't even rent a room anymore for less than $600 or $700 a month. And as I said, our biggest challenge is finding housing for people, but it takes some time, but we do it.
Great, great. What about the financial assistance available? You mentioned it in the beginning. There's also some financial funding. Perhaps the medication, the one man mentioned in the earlier call, I believe it was it Francis?
Right.
Well, what kind of assistance is there if people need to get their medications, and what are the financial assistances there?
Living in New York is quite a benefit for someone who is HIV positive. The city has an enhanced public assistance program where people, if they're eligible, are able to get cash benefits, Medicaid, rent money, and food stamps. For people that are not eligible for that, there is the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, which is run by the state. All your medications are paid for, your primary medical care is paid for. You can even get some home care if it's necessary. And it's a very simple process, and we have the applications if anyone needs them.
Great.
They can give us a call. And if anyone feels that they need to be hooked up with HASA, we'll be happy to tell them how to do that.
Great. Yeah. I believe we have Francis on the line.
Yes.
Again, thank you for calling.
Yeah. Hi.
Francis.
Judy.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify the group there. Hi, Louis, too. I forgot what the hell I did. I was just like overwhelmed. I just wanted to clarify, not HIV negative. I mean, I'm non-detectable. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you for clarifying.
I was just nervous speaking on TV.
No,
but also, I
that's-
wanted to vouch for Judy. She made it possible for my housing.
Great. Thank you, Francis.
Within 1 week, it was done.
Well,
My
you were
housing.
very lucky.
Oh, she did it in 1 week. I was like, damn, she is fast. Judy, and perhaps maybe, since I always sing for you the Ave Maria, when you close the show, why don't you give a little verse of your Ave Maria?
Okay, I'll do that, Francis.
I thought I wanted to clarify that, but you made it really, really possible, and I'm very happy in my housing.
Good, I'm glad.
Great.
You know, you're the best, and continue to carry on and do the good work, so all of you.
Thank you,
I'll
Francis.
see you, and I won't call back no more.
Oh, that's okay, Francis. Well, thank you, Francis, for pointing out this
I didn't
housing.
make him call.
Oh, no. It's good to hear feedback. Viewers out there, it's obvious ACQC has the services. You've just heard Francis was able to get housing within a week, which is
Wow, that's
super.
really unusual. I wanted to add that even if people are not eligible for our housing programs, that all the case managers will also help people find housing.
Right.
And it's quite a task, but we do it.
I'm sure. How many people, can you give an estimate of how many people actually use your services in a year, or how many people come?
Oh, I can't even think about a year. Right now, I think we're averaging, amongst all programs, about 1,200 clients a month.
Wow.
And that's education programs. They're coming in for workshops. They're seeing case managers. They're seeing our lawyers, the mental health clinic. So it's all combined. There's a lot of people living with HIV and AIDS in Queens, and it's an issue that we don't talk about often, unfortunately. But they're out there, and we're here to help them out. And you know, we continue to grow. But we only grow because the HIV epidemic is growing, and we're growing because with the advance in medications, people are living longer. And so the longer people live, then the more services they tend to need. And so we're here for them. So we're averaging about 1,200 a month right now.
I think the agencies will be turning 16 years old, and
Really?
I think the incredible difference is that when we first started doing this work, we were teaching people how to die, or we were making it easier for them to die, and now people are learning how to live with the virus.
Absolutely.
I believe I had done a show several years ago on women, AIDS, and safer sex. And we had someone from ACQC on the show. And that's already, I think, 7 years. And so this shows how long you've already been providing these services to such a large number of people. And I think what people might not know is where you are. How can they find you?
Right.
That is one concern I have about this one person somewhere who may need your services.
Yeah.
What type of publicity, public relation events? Do you have any benefits, etc.?
Well, we do a lot of outreach. I mean, I think that's one of the main ways that people find out that ACQC even exists.
Right.
We're in a borough of 3 million plus people. So it's a lot of folks. I mean, Queens alone is bigger than most major U.S. cities.
Right.
So it's definitely a task. Funding is scarce, honestly. So we rely a lot on our outreach workers to kind of hit the pavement, go out there,
Get
speak
into
to
the
people.
communities. Right.
We participate in as many health and street fairs as we can as well. We every now and then we have articles that come out in some of the local papers like the Queens Tribune. Our executive director every now and then writes some articles there, so that's one way that it goes out. We hold an annual fundraiser, our Gifts of Love auction, which is held every year, and it's a very successful auction. We have anywhere between 200 to 300 people that attend Terrace on the Park. So there's a couple of ways that we try to kind of put the word out there, but I think one of the major ways is just the networking between agencies. A lot of people find out about ACQC because they went to the city, they were on welfare, they were referred. Oh, you live in Queens? Call ACQC. So we're very well known within the AIDS community. And if you're living with HIV/AIDS, chances are you're going to get connected to someone that's going to refer you right back to ACQC.
Great. I'm a little curious about, you mentioned legal services. What types of legal services do you provide? Also, you mentioned an incarceration program. Do those two services sort of overlap, or what?
Well, They overlap a little bit, but
Not much,
basically,
but yeah.
right, basically the legal department helps people with any type of housing program, any type of family
Let's say
problem,
discrimination
getting
or
kids
something,
out
yeah.
of foster care, discrimination cases, a lot of debt management. A lot of our clients all of a sudden can't pay their bills, their credit cards, and the lawyers work with them to stop all the phone calls and the harassment that people get. And we just started a new permanency planning program where we have a lawyer and a social worker that are helping people make choices about their care of their children should anything happen to them, which is very important. They do a lot of health care proxies
And wills.
And particularly now we're reaching out to the community, to people who have children who would like to do a permanency plan.
Right.
I believe we have another caller. Sue, welcome, and thank you for calling.
Yes, hello.
Hello,
Hi,
Sue.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Good. I was wondering, how do you think, like, actually, how does AIDS affect the teenage community?
That's a very good question.
Excellent. In a lot of different ways. Obviously, young people are becoming infected with HIV because of unsafe sex behaviors, primarily because of unsafe sex risk behaviors. So obviously, a teenager who becomes infected, aside of everything else that is difficult about being a young person, HIV then obviously gets on top of all of that. Some young people obviously, were born with HIV, and because of the medications are now becoming teenagers.
Wow.
So they've been living with HIV for a long time, and that's a whole different dynamic. Our message is always, we do a lot of work with teenagers. We actually have an extremely successful adolescent program at our agency, which I'd encourage all young people to call. We don't only do HIV education, but we also run support groups for young people on just teenage issues. We also have support groups for young people who are questioning their sexuality or who are lesbian and gay or bisexual. You can call our Regal Park office, and we'd be happy to connect you to that. But just also in terms of HIV and AIDS, having any disease that has no cure is difficult. When you're young and you don't know what to do, or you have very little support, it becomes even harder. So the message is obviously, protect yourself, use condoms if you're having sex, don't share needles if you're using drugs, get support, get education, and support one another. Unfortunately, young people traditionally are not supported very much in society. And so, at ACQC, we obviously do our best to support the decisions that young people make, or at least help them decide which decisions are going to be best for them, that are going to keep them as healthy as possible.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sue. Great question.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm glad we had, I believe, a question about the teens. Teenage issues. Anything else you want to talk about regarding teens?
We could have spent the whole show talking about teens, like really. And it's not only HIV. There's high rates of STDs among young people as well. Chlamydia, there's a high rise in chlamydia rates amongst young people, which obviously puts them at risk of HIV, because if you're getting chlamydia, it means you could have been exposed to HIV. You're not having safe sex.
Right.
Pregnancy issues, right? Unwanted pregnancies. Young people need to get support from a wide range of places, not only at home. We'd hope for it to be at home. Parents need to learn and need to be more aggressive about talking with their children. And being very frank about, well, this is what's out there. This is what sex is about. A lot of young folks learn about sex on their own, right? We don't get that birds and the bees talk. And if we get it, it's not a very good talk. It's pretty much just don't do it, that's it. But young people do it. They're going through puberty, they have sexual desires, they're curious, they're in love. And they've always done it. Right? This isn't something new.
It's not new.
It's not a new thing. But we need to be able to talk to young people and say, well, this is how you protect yourself. You don't want to get pregnant. These are the ways that you can use birth control. You don't want to get an STD. Condoms are available. The female condom is available. And that message has to come from home, parents, guardians. It has to come from community centers like ACQC. It has to come from the schools. And the schools, I think, can do a better job in educating our young people around these issues. And I think once we kind of demystify the whole taboo around sex and sexuality, and maybe we can start having these open conversations, and young people will feel safe to say, well, you know what, I feel like I love my partner and I think I want to have sex. What should I do? What can I use? But if they don't feel safe to do that, then they're gonna experiment, or they're going to go blindly into a relationship
or make a choice
that make a choice that at the moment seems right but may have consequences to it later.
I think teenagers feel that they might know about HIV and STDs or even becoming pregnant, but they think that's not going to happen to me. And I think also that a lot of, especially the young gay men, haven't lost anyone to the virus, so they're not as conscious of prevention.
Interesting. Okay, I believe we have a caller, Mary.
Hi, yes.
Thank you for calling, Mary.
Oh, thank you. I think this is a very informative show.
Thank you.
And I'm glad I turned my channel.
We're glad to.
You mentioned chlamydia, and I'm not familiar with that disease. Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, chlamydia is one out of, I think, about 23 sexually transmitted diseases. And it is curable. It's not like HIV, which has no cure. But it does cause symptoms, usually in the genital area, and like open sores on the penis or inside the vagina. So it is something that you need to get medical attention for, and usually antibiotics does the trick.
Is it similar to herpes, or?
It's similar to herpes in the sense that it's a sexually transmitted disease. However, herpes doesn't have a cure. Herpes is caused by a virus. Once you have herpes, you'll always have it. Chlamydia doesn't work that way. Most people who get chlamydia can have it taken care of by some antibiotics, and it goes away.
So if you see that you have a sore, how do you know the difference between herpes and chlamydia?
Well, you might not. That's why you would need to go see your physician. Most STDs have very similar symptoms. A lot of them are associated with having sores in the genital area. And for lay people like us, even for physicians, it's hard to tell just by looking at it. So they would either do a blood test or take a culture of the area to determine which STD it is so that they can then treat it.
And what is the treatment?
Antibiotics for a lot of them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary.
It's a great show.
Thank you. And that's a good question, because if you do have, some people may not know they have an STD, such as chlamydia, practice unsafe sex, put themselves at risk.
Right, and what's actually really important is that if you do have an STD, you're at greater risk of getting HIV because of the open sore. Where usually there is intact skin, now you've actually created an opening where the virus can enter the body. And so if you're not using a latex barrier like a condom or a dental dam or female condom, and you have an STD and your partner has HIV, you have put yourself at greater risk than if you didn't have the STD. So it's extremely important that if you have a sore in the genital area, that you do get it checked out, you get it taken care of, because you're probably at greater risk of getting HIV.
Right. So people can also come down to ACQC for these services, I believe. You have medical.
We have primary care. We don't do STD screening at ACQC, however. Our physician, not yet.
Not yet.
The physician on staff does the primary care for a lot of people who have HIV. But you can definitely call us, and the New York City or the New York State Department of Health provides free STD screening and treatment.
Great.
So, and there's
we can provide all the telephone numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are 2 places in Queens, one in Corona on Junction Boulevard and one in Jamaica.
So we have any questions that you may not know the answer to, ACQC
People can feel free to call.
Yeah, if we don't provide it, we will connect you to someone who does. Absolutely.
Okay. Great. I believe we have Joanna on the phone.
Yes, I wanted to call first of all to thank ACQC. My brother would go to the center in Rego Park, and he survived for 9 years. He did pass away, and in fact, March 2nd, 2 days ago, was his 3rd anniversary.
Oh.
But I have to say that ACQC was there. My brother knew there was a place to go. They made him feel comfortable, especially, you could imagine, 8, 9 years ago, what someone with HIV was considered to be. And no one wanted to know them. And he felt very at home. He made friends, and it gave us all an education. And I want to thank you, and I would like to tell anybody who's listening not to be afraid to come to see you. I even recommended you once to a friend of mine whose brother also had HIV. They didn't even know any of the kind of services that were available. You helped him as well.
That's nice
and
to
I
hear.
really want to thank you so much. It just touches me personally, and I want people to know it's real. And thank God for people like you. Thank God.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for calling.
Could I ask you one
Sure.
question?
Absolutely.
Now a couple, two people meet and they want to get tested for AIDS to make sure that there's no problems, okay? I know years ago, if you took an HIV test, it's all anonymous or something like that.
That's an option,
Oh, it's an option.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because in other words, if you want to know about the other partner, it's not. I mean, you could say to the doctor, or do you recommend clinics where to go for this?
Well,
I think Mary perhaps is saying, let's say 2 people want to come down.
Like in other words, if you're saying, okay, now I want a couple, this is it, I'm serious.
And you want to make sure the result of your partner.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I'm at the point, I guess because of my brother did have HIV, condoms are not enough for me. I want a blood test. I want a blood test, and I want your name on it, that I know it's yours. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This is my very serious question because I'm single now, hoping to become a couple someday, and that's the only way I'm going. And I want to know, how do I go?
Yeah, and I think that is a good move for a lot of people who are looking to get into relationships. You know, that when you're in a relationship, when it gets to a point when you feel like you might want to be intimate with the person, that you talk about HIV and the risks associated. And if you both agree to go get tested, I think that's a great thing. Now, the issue you bring up is kind of like a really touchy one. When you do go get, you definitely have an option of going to an anonymous test, which is provided through the Department of Health, or a confidential test, which is done at most CBOs or through your doctor. Regardless of which one you take, the individual person's result is protected under the law as confidential. So in other words, unless that person tells you their result and you trust them that they're telling you the truth,
or shows you the paper,
or shows you the
Right.
paper with their name and the status on it, which they can do, you just can't go and try to get that information. That's not how it works.
That's governed right by
Absolutely.
medical.
So you won't be able to call the doctor and say, well, we went last week to get tested. I know you told me I was negative. What was my partner's result?
So in other
if
words,
he
when
told you or she told you, they'd be breaking the law.
Okay, but when they give you the results, they could give it to you on a piece of paper that says HIV negative.
Yes,
They do give it to you on a piece of paper.
Oh, they do?
Yes, but that you would have to go to a confidential testing, which is through...
Is that like Elmhurst Hospital?
Elmhurst Hospital would do confidential testing. Yeah, absolutely. Because anonymous testing, you never give your name. It's anonymous.
That's anonymous.
So they can't give you a paper with your name on it because they don't even know your name. You understand?
Oh, so you need the confidential, not anonymous.
Right. You would need to go to a confidential, take a confidential test, and that test result would come back with the person's name on it and their test result. But
And Elmhurst Hospital does that?
Most hospitals can give you an HIV test, HIV antibody test. A private physician at ACQC, we have testing as
Or
well.
even the private physicians do it.
Private physician, if you ask your primary medical physician that you want to be HIV tested, they'll do it.
Right. Okay.
If you go to the Department of Health for an anonymous test, at the time you get your test result, you could ask them at that moment that you'd like to change it to a confidential test.
Oh.
So then at that point, they would then change the result to a confidential test, and then they would then at that point start taking your name and some information about you. Some of it for demographic reasons. and then your name would kind of get attached into the result. But that it would be at your request.
Okay, well, I want to thank you again for helping my brother and my friend, and now for helping me.
Thank you for calling, Joanna. Thank you for calling.
So long now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I think Joanna's question was quite interesting. Do you see people coming in as partners who want to get tested in this sort of scenario?
Yeah, I think most people come in individually,
Right.
But we do have couples that come in, and couples can request that they get the counseling done together. Sometimes it's not recommended because the counselor, especially during the pre-test counseling, really wants people to give honest answers. And because part of the pre-test counseling, they ask some really invasive questions. How many partners have you had? When was the last time you had sex? You know, have you had sex with women, with men, with both? And so when you're with your partner and you have secrets or things that, you know, you may not want to disclose to them about your previous sexual history, you may not then be as honest as you should be when you're taking the test. So, you know, a lot of times it's encouraged that people do the test individually.
But they can come in together.
But they can definitely come in together, and a lot of times, you know, under certain circumstances, they can have the test done together as well.
We also talked, and I believe the one caller early on, I believe it was Anne, who brought up the idea that heterosexual women should get tested. Are there any new issues that any segment of the heterosexual community that needs to be targeted, women in general?
Well, I think Anne was right on target. All women. There's not any specific group of women that shouldn't be tested. We have had a big increase in people over the age of 50. I won't say a big increase because it's not a big one, but we have had more women coming in who are over 50.
Wow. I believe Francis is back again. Thanks again.
I broke my promise.
Okay, that's fine.
But I couldn't hold it in to that last caller, Joanna. I mean, I'm sorry about her brother. And God bless, she's, you know, wants to protect herself. But what happens if she does meet someone who is HIV? Won't love conquer it and understand and overshadow that their relationship, that he is positive or others significant? I mean, I'm full blown, and I met many. I'm gay, and I met many men who are HIV negative. They fell in love with me, but I closed the door because they weren't really. Nothing compatible? You know, it doesn't matter if we're HIV and they're negative. It's what love that counts. It's because I know lots of couples who are HIV for years and their spouses are still negative. It's a matter of protecting yourself.
I think that's absolutely true, but I think everyone does have the right to know the status of their partner.
Right, true.
And so if one partner is positive, they can be very careful.
Right, well...
I think another piece of that is people, you know, we're talking about an illness that has no cure, that people get very sick from and that they die from.
True. I
and I think that people have a lot of concerns about getting into relationships and then falling in love and then losing that person, right? We all know what it feels like to lose a loved one.
Right, and there's many elements.
And so some people may not just be willing to go there.
Right.
But I know, like you say, Francis, I know many people that someone's HIV status really doesn't play a role in them deciding whether they want to date them or not, or marry them or not, or have sex with them or not, as long as there's protection involved so that HIV is not passed from the positive person to the negative person. But it's a hard thing to say, you know.
Also, it may be a question for a heterosexual couple if they do want to have children.
Right.
Having children, I mean, that is a whole different issue.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I know many, 3-4 women now in my program I attend at PSI in Jamaica, Queens, that they're pregnant right now and they're happy, and you know, we can't stop it. I personally wouldn't have bring another child into the room, to the world, knowing that I have HIV and my partner too. That's, you know, to each his own. No one has the right to judge, you know, these people have the virus and they shouldn't bring their child, because most of I don't know what the statistics on children when they're born. Will they develop their own what's that word called?
Immune system.
Immune system, and they'll after like 11 weeks, is it whatever, or 3 months, they'll be HIV negative.
Right.
And I just like I find that like, hey, we're gonna my mother's a diabetic. Does my father have to divorce her or not have sex with her, or
Right. I mean, it's two different diseases.
I
Obviously,
know, I understand, but it's still another ailment, and we all have ailments in this world. And I think 85% of Americans are living on chemicals, on medicines, and
right. But Francis brings up, and you brought up an issue just around children.
Right.
There are a lot of serodiscordant couples where one is positive, one is negative, that they want to have a child. And how do you tell someone who wants to raise a family, possibly a young couple, don't raise a family, don't have children? It's a very hard decision to make. That couple obviously, I think, needs to educate themselves as much as possible. Probably go have some counseling. I recently met with a couple in that same situation. Wow. The husband is positive, the wife is negative. She's the one that wants to have a baby. And so, well, the first thing to do is, do you understand the possibility that you may become infected? Once you're infected, then there's a possibility that the child will become infected.
Right.
However, on the other hand, I think also most people feel that there's a high percentage of babies born to HIV positive that are positive, and it's actually the other way around.
Really?
Yeah, most children, most babies born to HIV positive mothers are negative.
Wow.
If it's about 75% are negative. If the woman takes no medication. Now, if woman takes medication throughout her pregnancy, and then also opts for a cesarean section when she's giving birth, then the statistics are almost only 1%, 1 to 3% that the child will be positive, and those are pretty good odds.
Yes.
So you think about, okay, here's a woman wants to have a child. If she becomes positive, or she's already positive, she takes medication throughout her pregnancy,
so she can minimize.
She gets a C-section. There's anywhere between a 95 to a 99% chance that the baby will be negative.
Wow.
So those are good odds, you know what I mean, that the baby will be negative. And because of the advance in treatments, we're seeing much fewer infants born with HIV today than at one time. Absolutely.
Francis, thanks again for calling.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm happy anyway, single by myself until I meet my match anyway. Until then,
Good luck.
That's right. Abstinence is golden for me right now, and it works. Until I meet the dream come true. Oh, where could my lover be?
I knew he would be single.
I know. You know me. All right, bye.
Thanks, Francis.
No
Thank
more.
you, Francis.
No more calling.
Okay.
Promise. You cross my heart.
Okay.
Bye.
I believe we have Elizabeth on the line. Hello, Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Maybe not.
Did we lose Elizabeth?
You hearing me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you guys for speaking on HIV and AIDS. You very rarely see that nowadays. And I wanted to say also that it's important to address also what happens with the survivor. My husband died of AIDS, and I was negative. But I have so much problem with dating or anything like that. As soon as I say my husband died of AIDS, they want me to go run and take a test. I mean, and we need to address that. We don't address that. We talk about the person that has the virus, but we don't talk about their mates that are negative and the consequences that they suffer afterwards.
That's an excellent call, information you're bringing to us to the show. And we have only a few more minutes left to address this. Perhaps you can sum up.
There's so many issues, and Elizabeth, is it?
Elizabeth, yes.
It is really important. I think that the stigma attached to HIV and AIDS is not only placed on the individual who is infected, but on the family, the husband, the wife, the children, the mother, the father. It's like the whole family gets ousted, or everyone looks at them differently. And so you're absolutely right. As a survivor, the children, whether you're a child, a parent, a lot of people don't know how to handle or questions from society. Even when they ask, well, what did they die of? We're almost ashamed to say, oh, they had AIDS.
Well, see, that's what happened with me at first.
Right.
My husband did not want anyone to know. Of course, looking at him, you knew he had it, And unfortunately, he was a counselor. And he couldn't deal with it himself. I honestly believe that it was more the fact that he was ashamed that he had this that killed him more than anything else.
Right.
But the fact, I loved him till the end. I still love him. And I'm not ashamed of him of who he was.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like if he had cancer, would I love him less? if he broke, cut off a leg, would I love him less? Absolutely not. And so when I do go out and I meet someone, I'm honest. They ask me. I'm not going to say he died of cancer.
Right.
And
I think that what you're doing is one step.
Right.
This
And
is
I
a
think
long
it would be right. And I think education, and this perhaps is another area ACQC.
We need to be able to. When you talk about something freely.
Thanks again, Elizabeth.
It starts becoming.
Thank you.
I guess normalized. You know what I mean?
And I think perhaps more people like Elizabeth should come and get in touch with you at ACQC. Perhaps there's another segment of the community here in Queens that could, perhaps she could be a peer counselor.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying you have to. Support group for survivors, especially spouses who are now negative. Anything you want to quickly add? We just have about to. Just come and see. Okay, well, thank you again, Luis Ortega and Judy Pedraza, for coming down. I'm Christine Callinger, and thanks for listening to Talking About ACQC. See you next time.